I realize this is a very rare and auspicious event to actually have somebody from Dehydrated present the Dehydrated perspective. It's kind of like seeing a snow leopard. There's a reason for that, and one of the reasons is the fact that the companies that compete predominantly in this sector of trade are privately held. And so there's a lot of anonymity that we like to hold for ourselves because our strategies are very unique and different from one another, so of which we respect that of our competitors. So hopefully today, as I present the thoughts, I can give respect across the industry for the people who we compete against, which actually is not only just Dehydrated, but it's refrigerated, frozen. It's everybody. We are all trying to lift the consumer to purchase more potatoes as a whole. So to begin with, we'll talk today about consumer dynamic and side dishes, also global awareness, and raw and innovation. So the consumer dynamic, jump right into this. The consumers of dehydrated potatoes. If you take any one of these attributes, you'll say, well, that's my brand, that's my product. You know, all consumers are time-starved, they're time-constrained. So as you look at this, I want you to look at it as a collective whole. Okay, so the dehydrated consumer, they are very time-constrained. They're very value-conscientious. Food substance, it has to be it's very important for them because they want to make sure that their families are getting the nutritional aspects that they need. However, the healthier eating habits have not evolved as rapidly. So you aren't going to look at the dehydrated consumer and say they're going to be eating arugula lettuce dusted with cricket powder and washed down with kombucha tea. That's not our consumer. We know that, and we're okay with that. You kind of got to know who you are, right? And so we're okay with that. We're okay with the fact that our consumers are the ones, they're mainstream America. Okay, we market to the mass who they do want to feed their families something, they want to clear their plates, and these are hearty, whole appetites. They are meat and potato eaters. Canned and processed foods are okay, which is great. And then they also have habitual grocery shopping, so they will go to the store with shopping lists. The segmentation, this is just kind of how we segmented the category. There's no real science to this. This was probably more opinion than anything else. And what you see on the y-axis here is you'll see the number of children in the home, and across the x-axis you'll go from the younger to the older family stages. We look at the people who are within the category, and this is more so within retail. The people who are within the category, the older people, fewer kids, brand value, these are people who've been buying brands like General Mills, Hungry Jack, Idahoan, Idaho Spuds, those types of brands for a long period of time. Then you have category Loyalists. These people who are older with a lot of kids, they really need to feed their family substantial food. And then you have your people who are the convenience shoppers. These are, they do have several children in the home, but they're so busy. Life is so hectic, time is so constrained that they want to put a quick, good meal on the table for their children. And then the top left, which is the experimental, which we call the experimental foodies. These are the younger people with children, and they're trying to experiment what their children will like. You know, even if you are serving arugula with cricket dust, if your kids don't eat it, I'm sorry, you're not going to feed it to them. You want to have your kids, full and nourished. So those are the experimental foodies. The big gap that exists, and almost every conference you go to, you go through the whole conference and somebody has to say something about millennials. Okay, and it just gets to the point that annoys me. But having said that, the bottom left-hand corner is the millennials. Okay, these are the younger families, very few children, and those are the people who are having different eating trends today, and we're figuring out how to address that. And as a category and as a group, I think we have an ability to address that, but I think we have to make sure that we don't swing all the way to the extreme. That's a personal opinion. So with that being said, we'll move on from the consumer, and we'll talk about side dishes. A couple reasons. If it's so rare for us to stand up here, why would I stand up here and present? One of the reasons is to ensure that Dehydrated becomes elevated to a position of prominence and equal latitude within the industry. That's one. Another reason is we want to share our perspective on where the opportunities across the globe are. because there are opportunities where I think if we address it correctly as an industry, we can lift the potato consumption throughout the world. And I think that would be something that would be important to everybody within this room. So let's talk a little bit about how this happened within retail, because we did see a transformation of retail and we were a part of that. And I'm also going to discuss what happened with other side dishes. Potatoes are the #1 side dish in retail. Now this excludes chips. So within the data, you'll see retail data, you'll see food service data. In retail data, we exclude chips. And in food service data, because the giant is so large, we exclude fries. So we try to exclude that so it doesn't tip the scales one way or the other too far. So potatoes, and these are in retail dollars, $4.4 billion of all the different formats. Rice and pasta, $2.5 and $2.3 billion. Collectively, they're larger than potatoes. And consumers today are making decisions between potatoes, rice, and pasta. And that's what I wanted to convey to you, is the importance of, there's a lot of market share that we can grab as we go forward, because those are not small numbers. That collective $4.8 billion between rice and pasta. Of what are purchased in retail among all the different formats, dehydrated is 10.5% of that, refrigerated is 10.5%, frozen and fresh. Having said that, the growth of potatoes is very flat as a whole. Rice and pasta are growing. And why are they growing? Illustrating that by the right-hand side of the slide, which shows some of the flavors and some of the seasonings. Now, some of these seasonings don't really apply to potatoes. You have to have some certain matches with your flavors and seasonings. We get that. But as you can see, the top rice flavors, you have chicken, then you have a southern type of a flavor with New Orleans Spanish, and you can go across the top pasta flavors. Some of these flavors actually have relevance within potatoes. Within food service, and this does exclude fries, and this data, all of the information is sourced at the bottom. This data is from the MPD supply track. This was only from participating broadline distributors. And the reason I state this is because that 970 million pounds right there, that's not all of potatoes. That was only from who was within this survey of the broadline distributors. So this is not meant to actually relate how large potatoes were in food service. It's really meant to relate the relative size between potatoes and pasta and rice. And once again, pasta and rice are fairly significant within food service. And what's even more interesting is all of them are growing just over 2%. But then we break the information down just a little bit further, because as we look at our business, we really want to dive in to find out what nuances are happening and what trends do we see coming, because we want to be where the ball's going to be, skate to where the puck's going to be. That's why some of these, LeBron James and some basketball players are so good. They know where the ball's going to be 3 passes down the line. And so as we look at this, there's a couple of concerning things that we need to address as an industry. First off, the share of volume within food service, 6% of it comes from dehydrated. But the thing that concerns us somewhat is in full service restaurants, from the data that we have, and this is from Technomic, this is Q3 2006, mashed potatoes in full service restaurants are down 2%, but rice and pasta are down a little bit too. Some of that is because of the healthy eating trends. So we as an industry have a responsibility to look toward innovation to address the consumer's needs. And I'll talk a little bit about this later. We don't want to swing the pendulum too far because we don't want to go past where the consumer's at, because then we'll lose the game as well. Okay, I want to move on to global awareness. Because I think that this is very important for us to address as to how dehydrated really relates to the industry. And I love this slide right here. This is the total share of utilization of raw material in 2015. It's a little bit dated, but the new study hadn't come out unless it comes out later today in one of the presentations. Dehydrated is 8% of the utilization of raw material, so almost 10%. What's very impressive, though, is of all the different formats, Dehy grew 10.4%. That was a greater growth percent than any of the other formats. Now, part of that could be because of excess raw material between 2014 and 2015, because if there's excess raw, we don't want to smoke and mirrors and tell you this was all growth, right? So some of it was opportunistic. So let's talk about raw material and the impact that it has on innovation. Okay, it's very well understood that dehydrated manufacturers can take trouble loads. Well, with that being said, we don't want it running out of the truck before we run it through the plant. Okay, so we want to make sure that the raw material is still very good quality, and we do have preferences. You may not think that we're very preferential. We are very preferential to a certain degree, maybe not as much as the fryers, but we are preferential. So the way you look at this is on the y-axis is the solids, and so we like the greater solids because we do believe that with a high solid potato with a good flavor, that you actually can influence your product quality and the product flavor and taste. Out here on the x-axis, you have the sugars, and we do prefer to have low to medium sugars. Okay, because you saw that one slide that I had all of those snack foods, right? Well, sugars are important to those companies as well, because you can't have too high of sugars because you don't want to get the browning notes. What this simply represents is that Dehydrated is very well situated to compete on a global stage. We can get products around the world efficiently, and we can do it with dry storage and long shelf life. And as you look at this chart, the number across the side, you see here, it takes about 10 truckloads of raw material, and you can ship that same finished goods with 2 trucks of Dehydrated. With refrigerated and frozen, it takes about 7 trucks for every 2 trucks of Dehydrated. So as we look at feeding the world's needs, we look at this and say this is couple that with a map of all the flake plants around the world. We have a great opportunity to lift the industry by further feeding the world's needs. There's markets in the world that they don't even really know what a mashed potato is. You go to China and they really don't know what a mashed potato is. So we have a lot of education across the globe to do with consumers. Okay, in the dehydrated industry, we're doing our best to increase perceptions of what the products are and what they'll deliver. But we have even a bigger challenge worldwide to get the consumers across the world to eat potatoes in a format that we're used to, or one that fits within what they will be accustomed to. Here's one of the unashamed plugs. Okay. It's very important if you want to introduce new categories new consumers to a category. You want them to enter at a point that will exceed their expectations. And I think one of the problems that we've had within the industry is, and this is, you see the retail category grow 2.5 times its size. One of the problems that we've had is that people enter with a really simple flake. It's just a flake. And pretty much anybody can produce flakes. It's not as if it's rocket science. But the flake was built back in the 1930s and 40s and 50s. This is like a 56 Bel Air, right? And so what we're saying is, hey, we got a brand new car for you. It weighs 8,000 pounds, and its 0 to 60 speed is about 12 seconds, but you'll love it, okay? And plus you can fit 12 people in it. Well, it doesn't fit today's needs. Okay, that type of a car, a 56 Bel Air doesn't fit. But when people come into the category, the very first thing they taste is something that was built, has technology that was built back in the 1940s and 50s and 60s. And I think that's one of the reasons why there's a negative connotation or perception about Dehydrated. Because I promise you, because I could ask for a raise of hands and say, how many of you have tried the Dehydrated products, the flavored mashed products that are put out there on the market today? And some of you go, well, I won't eat those, because you represent, you think back on flakes, and you go, this is what they taste like. That's not what they taste like today. Okay, I would challenge you to try the products that are on the market today, whether it's in food service or whether it's in retail, and I promise you we will exceed your expectations. That is what the objective is. And so when we have people enter into the category, we want them to enter at products like this signature russets. Okay, we want them to enter at a point that encourages repeat purchases, and then the entire category can lift. And that's what the objective is to lift the entire category. We want to be buying more potatoes. We want to be growing, and we believe that Dehydrated is the format, but we have so many preconceived notions to overcome because there's so many people that won't even buy the brand, but won't even buy the category. Okay? And that goes for food service operators as well. So there's operators that will not purchase it because they have a preconceived notion. In order to get over that, you have to get the product in their mouths. I remember last year, Blair Richardson said, this is the food truck, he talked about experiential marketing. And when it comes to experiential marketing, people actually have to put it in their mouth. And when you put a dehydrated product in your mouth, it's gonna totally change your perceptions about what it is. And so there's my unashamed promotion, okay? We're very passionate about what we do, and we're very proud of the agricultural background which we have as a company, and which we have as an industry as well, as I look across the industry, across the audience. So, in conclusion, okay, just a couple things, and we'll go through what the table stakes are. But I talked a little bit about balancing trends, and if you think about it, at one point it was fat, and then it was sodium, and then it was carbs, and today it's gluten. And I remember it was back at the carb craze when Atkins was just going crazy, and our sales actually dropped off 20% that year, 20%, and everybody panicked. And I said to the owners of the company at that time, this is before Ron Offit had bought Idahoan, I said, don't panic, hold. You know, this is going to change. People can't eat this way. They can't eat this way. And we experienced 20% in 1 year, a massive 20% decline. Next year, we regained the 20, came out with flavored match type items, and blew right past the 20%. So as we look at these trends, I think we have to balance them and say how many of these trends are actually going to be long-term trends. Do I think people are going to, in general, eat healthier? Yeah, I think they're going to eat healthier. They will. But I don't think it's going to be arugula and cricket dust that they consume a lot of. Okay, they're actually going to be eating our types of products, the products that we produce as an industry. So I think we have to be very cognizant of that. The other thing that worries me is not so much about the competitors and competitors that are in this room. It's the unknown competitor. It's what we don't know that worries me. What other eating trends will come that we need to be concerned about? So I think that's also something we have to keep our ear to the ground and make sure that we are doing our due diligence on innovation. Changing consumer perceptions, I've talked a lot about that, and you do that through innovation. You do that by providing exceptional products. And then the last was the worldwide need to feed. And I believe that Dehydrated is better positioned to serve the needs of the growing population of the world than any other format. I think we're in a very unique position. I think that there are, the drums across the world are very well positioned, and I think we can do this. But if we want them to enter in at that, I think that we'll have the same challenge that we have in overcoming the perceptions. I think we have to introduce innovation as we expand across the globe. So last point, table stakes. At a restaurant, this is an Italian restaurant, and as we order our steaks, they came out with the steak knives after our salads, and they slammed the steak knives into the table like that. So like, you know, they're just like, and we were shocked as we watched these steak knives. So I took a picture, and little did I know that it would actually work really well in this presentation. Okay, but that's how they did it. So these are the table stakes that I see in the Dehydrated and as an overall industry. Raw material is absolutely paramount. We've got to make sure we have the best raw material possible. We need to understand what is going across happening across the globe so that we can better satisfy the needs, the feeding needs, and the unique eating needs of the consumers. And then share of stomach. I talked about all the side dishes. It's not just about competing among ourselves within the industry for share of stomach, but it's also the other choices that consumers are making. And the intersection between raw material and share of stomach is at innovation. And innovation is the yeast that will make the category rise. With that being said, that's everything I have for you today. Thank you for your time.